What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your Rockbeam DC light. As you can see, it comes with the moving headlight itself. You also get a DMX cable to connect your light to a DMX controller or a second light, and it also comes with a power cable to power the light. It also comes with a mounting bracket that you can attach to the bottom of the light so you can mount the light onto a truss. And it comes with a DMX guide, which tells you what each mode of the light does and how it can work with your DMX controller. So before we dive in, let's talk about the different ways we can position our light. So because there's these rubber feet on the bottom of the light, this means it can go onto any surface like a table, on top of a totem stand, or even the floor for a wall washing effect. For wall washing, you can either place it completely flush to the wall so that the light will beam directly upwards, or you can take the light and place it a few feet away so that it can hit the light in a different angle. And because it comes with a mounting bracket, we can also mount the light onto a truss. For this setup, you're also going to need a lighting clamp like our very own LC70 here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is remove this bolt here on the bottom of the lighting clamp, and I'm also going to take off this butterfly nut here. Next, I'm going to take the mounting bracket and line up this hole here in the middle to the hole here on the bottom of the lighting clamp. I'm going to take this bolt and run them through the holes of the bracket and of the lighting clamp. And then I'm going to take the butterfly nut and screw that back onto the bolt for extra security. So now that we've got the bracket attached to the lighting clamp, the next thing we're going to want to do is attach the bracket to the bottom of the light. So to do that, we're gonna go to the bottom and find these two screws here. These are what we're gonna use to attach the bracket onto the light, so we can take them out by using a screwdriver. After you've taken out the screws, you're gonna take your mounting bracket with your clamp, and you're gonna line up these holes on the mounting bracket to the holes here on the bottom of your light. Then you're gonna line these screws back up to the holes of the bracket and the bottom of the light, and then use a screwdriver to fully tighten these screws to lock the mounting bracket in place. So now that we've got the mounting bracket along with the lighting clamp secured to the light, the next thing we can do is mount it onto our truss. So to do that, we're just going to loosen this butterfly screw here on the lighting clamp. And you're gonna want to do this until there's enough space to line the clamp up to a spot on your truss. Once you have enough room, you're gonna take your whole light and you're going to find a spot on your truss to mount your light to. Then you're gonna line up the light along with the clamp to that spot where you want it mounted and tighten the butterfly screw until it's fully secure onto your truss. Now keep in mind, you'll want to be sure that you have long enough cable to run your DMX and your power cable from the light to wherever you have your DMX controller or power supply. So to get a better understanding for the light, let's go over all the different controls and functions. Starting with the back of the light, we have the power in socket, and this is where we're gonna connect our power cable to power the light. So we're gonna take the blue end here and plug it into the power in. Make sure that these grooves here fit inside of the grooves of the socket, and then you're just gonna give it a twist to the right. You'll then hear it click into place, letting you know it's secure. Then you're gonna take the other end and plug it into a wall outlet or a power source. Next, we have the on and off switch for the light, so whenever we're ready to power it on, we can flip it to the on position. Whenever we want to turn it off, we flip it to the off position. We have the fuse for the light in the middle, and then next to the fuse, we have the DMX in and the DMX out sockets. So we can use the DMX out socket to connect from our first light here out to another light. And then we have the DMX in, so you can connect from another device like a DMX controller or another light for master slave. And then on the front of the light, we have these different buttons here. So we have the menu button, which we can use to cycle between the different modes available on the light. You can also use the up and down buttons to cycle between different modes or to cycle between different settings inside of those modes. And then you have the enter button to save any changes or to enter a mode and use the up and down buttons to make customized settings. So now that we know what everything does on the light itself, we're gonna power it on so we can go through the different modes. So the first mode we have is the ADDR mode, which is the DMX address mode. You can also use this mode to set your light to slave mode if it's connected to a master light. Next, we have the DMX channel mode, where the light tells us there are 12 channels to use when connected to a DMX controller. This means you can use 12 faders with your controller, and each of these faders have a different function to control your light, but we're going to be going over all of that later on. Next, we have the SLND mode, and with this mode, we can set our light either to an auto mode, where it will cycle between different colors and different movements, or we can set the light to sound mode, where the light will interact with the sound picked up by the built-in microphone. So for example, on this mode, I'm gonna press enter, and then from there we can use the up or down buttons to cycle between auto or sound mode. So if I press enter, you'll see the auto mode come up, and then I can use the up or down buttons to cycle between that or the sound mode. And so if I want to use the auto mode, I'm going to press enter, and then our light will function on its own. Alternatively, I can go back with the menu button and cycle it to the sound mode and press enter. And now the light will interact with any sound picked up by the microphone. So as you can tell, it's already reacting to the sound of my voice right now. Even when we clap, it switches function as well. Next, we have the preset mode, which allows us to pan our light from side to side. If we hit yes, then we have the light panning this way. And if we have it set to the no setting, it will pan towards the opposite direction. Next, we have the tilt mode, where we can tilt the y-axis of the light. And again, this has only two settings, yes or no. So when it's set to yes, we have the light tilted here. And if we have it set to no, it's gonna tilt to the opposite direction. Next, we have the sensitivity menu, which allows us to set the sensitivity of the built-in mic, which again works with the sound mode for the light. So the more sensitive we have this setting, the more the light will interact with any sound it picks up. Next, we have the LED menu, which works with the LED display right here on the front of the light. When we have this set to the on position, we have the display lit up at all times. And if we turn this off, the LEDs will turn off after 5 seconds of inactivity. Next, we have the display menu, where we can invert the display of the light. So if we turn this setting on, it's actually going to invert the display, and this is handy in case our light is upside down on a truss. And to set it back to normal, all you have to do is set this to off. Next, we have the temperature menu, which tells us the temperature of the light in Fahrenheit. Then we have the version menu, which tells us about the software built into the light. And then we have the factory menu, where we can set the light back to the factory settings for a reset. So one thing to keep in mind is that if you have your light set to slave mode, the SLND setting won't work for that slave light. However, you'll still be able to pan or tilt your light. So another way we can control our light is by setting it up to a DMX controller like this one here. This gives you a bit more control over the light so that you can use it for your stage shows, live productions, etc. So the first thing we can do for this setup is connect our DMX controller to the light, and to do that we can use the included DMX cable that came with the light. So we're gonna take the male end of our cable and plug it into the DMX out on our controller. So now from our DMX controller, we have our first light of the chain all set up. And if you wanted to add another light to this chain, all you're gonna do is take another DMX cable, plug it into the DMX out of your first light, then plug the other end into the DMX in on the second light, and so on and so forth. So now to make sure our light will communicate with our controller, we have to first set our light to the DMX address mode. To do that, we're gonna press the menu button until we see the address menu. Then we're gonna press enter. And then from there, we can use the up and down arrows to set our light to a different DMX address. For today, we're gonna set it to A001. and press enter to save the change. So now that that's all set, I'm going to turn on my controller. If you have more than one light set up, you're gonna want to set them all to the same DMX address. Next, we're gonna activate scanner 1 on our controller. Now the adjustment of each fader is measured by what they call values. The easiest way to tell what value you're setting your fader to is by looking at the screen on the top of your controller. And for some of the modes, each value has a different function for the light, but we're gonna be going over that as we progress here. So now let's go through all the faders. Starting with fader 1, we can use this to adjust the x-axis for the light. So if we adjust fader 1 here, you'll see the light rotate just like this. Next we have fader 2 to fine-tune this rotation. Then we have fader 3 to adjust the tilt for the light, so the more I raise that, the more you see the light tilting up. And then we can use fader 4 to fine-tune this rotation. Then we have fader 5, which controls the speed of these rotations. So if I were to raise this all the way up and then use fader 1, you'll see that the light is being rotated very, very slow. It's going, I promise. But if we lower fader 5 a little bit, you'll see that it rotates a little faster. And if we set it all the way down, it rotates at full speed. Next we have fader 6, which acts as the dimmer for the light, or how we adjust the overall brightness. So if we raise this all the way up, then that's max brightness right there. And we can set this even lower if we want it less bright, just like that. And then next to that we have fader 7, which activates the strobe mode for the light. So if I raise this just a little bit, you'll see that it flashes slowly, and if I raise it more, the flash becomes quicker. Fader 8 allows you to change the color for the light, and this is also where the values are important because certain value ranges determine the color for the light. For example, values 0 through 15 set the light to this white color here, and if we were to change that anywhere from 16 to 31, it sets the light to this red color here. There's a lot of other colors that are also available when we go up on the fader here, and to see which values activate which color, you can always refer to the DMX guide. Also, what's cool is that you can use whichever color you select for the shapes that you set your light to, the strobe, etc. Speaking of shapes, we have fader 9 that allows us to set up a different shape or pattern for the light. So for example, if we went anywhere from value 40 to 47, it sets the light to the star shape here. Next we have fader 10, which activates a prism shape, which is really cool. So from value 0 to 7, this will leave the shape off, but once we go after that point, we activate the prism. And from values 128 to 255, we can get this prism to spin, and the higher we go, the faster we can make it spin. Next we have fader 11 to activate the auto mode for the light. So from values 0 to 50, we have the auto mode off, but once we go to 51, then the auto mode starts to activate in the fast movement. From values 101 to 200, we can set it to the slow auto mode. And from values 201 to 255, we can activate the sound mode for the light. And with fader 12, we can reset the light once it hits anywhere from 201 to 209. It's gonna take 5 seconds and then the light will restart. So that's what all the faders do here on our DMX controller. But now let's go over how we can have a wireless DMX controller set up to our light. So a cool thing is if you have a wireless DMX controller like this one here, you can get a wireless DMX receiver like the DMX WRE to plug into your light to make it completely wireless. Basically how this works is you can activate the wireless connection from your controller. From there, it's going to send out a wireless DMX signal, which we call a wireless DMX ID code, which can be picked up by the receiver here as long as they're set to the same wireless DMX ID code. And it's really easy to sync these up because these codes are color coded. So as long as they're set to the same color, the controller and your receiver, which will be plugged into the light, will communicate. So first we're gonna activate the wireless DMX on the controller. You'll then see this light flash here, and that's the wireless DMX ID code looking to connect to another device. And to set it to a different color, all we have to do is press this button here, and then you'll see that we have different options. So we have red, green, yellow, blue, and so on. So for today, we're actually gonna set this code to the blue one. So now that we have the wireless DMX code set up on our controller, we then have to do the same thing on our receiver here. To do that, all we have to do is press this button here on the receiver, and it's really small, so you may need a small object like an Allen key, a small flathead screwdriver, or whatever you can use to access this button here. And you're gonna press this button until you see the light up blue. And right away you can tell that your controller and your receiver are synced once the controller flashes red and the receiver flashes green. So now all we have to do is plug the receiver into the DMX in on our light. And just like we did earlier, you'll want to set your light to the DMX address mode and set it to a specific DMX address. For today, we're gonna set it to A001. Then we're gonna activate scanner 1 on our controller. And now if we start to use the faders on our controller, you'll see it starts to work with the light. And if you want to do this with multiple lights, you just need a wireless receiver for each light that you want to control from your DMX controller. So now if you wanted to control multiple lights at once, but you didn't want to set up a DMX controller, another way we can do this is by using the master slave function. Basically how this works is that we chain our lights together, but the first light of our chain acts as the leader so that the rest of the lights will follow. So first we'll choose which light we want to set as the leader light. So we'll go with this one right here. And with the rest of the lights, we're gonna set them to slave mode by going to the DMX address menu here. And we'll want to set each of these lights to the same DMX address. For today, we'll use A001. So now to connect our first light to the second light, we're going to take the included DMX cable, plug the male end into the DMX out on the main light, then plug the other end into the DMX in on the second light. And remember, if you wanted to set up even more lights, all you'll need to do is take another DMX cable, plug the male end into the DMX out on the second light, then plug the other end into the DMX in on the next light, and so on and so forth. And remember to set all of the slave lights to the DMX address mode and set them to the same DMX address. So to see if this works, I can go to the first light here and set it to auto mode. You'll see that both of the lights interact at the same time. And whatever adjustments we make on the first light, they will also be made on the second light. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your Rockbeam DC lights. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.